Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's Sunday afternoon, about 4 o'clock. Uh, Today, I'm out there searching for some answers to some problems that I foresee down the line here. And one of the problems certainly is youth unemployment. The most unemployed sector in the world today are 18 to 25, 28-year olds. And this is going to cause tremendous turmoil simply because they're the idealists. They're the people that are just thinking about getting married, just thinking about getting a house, just getting out of college and can't find a job, uh, and it's going to cause a lot of chaos because they're the ones that have the time and the energy to get out in the street. But one of the things that leads to this problem of unemployment, and we've talked about this before, is the fact that within, I say, 8, 10 years, 3D printing and robotics is going to replace hundreds and hundreds of millions of jobs. Take a guy that works repairing cars. He in a couple of years, he's going. Well, he could do it today if his the repair shop had the money to buy a 3D printer like Jay Leno has. Uh, but you're not going to send out for anything. You're just going to get the software for that whatever you need, the carburetor or a brake or whatever you're going to need, and you're just going to print the damn thing. Now that's going to hurt UPS and it's going to hurt all these auto stores that have to keep um, multiple parts on hand 24/7 and places like that. But yeah, you add to that, you add the medical usage, and now there are certain operations that are done robotically. Uh, the robots are going to eventually. You say, well, who's going to make the 3D printers? Well, the robots are going to make the 3D printers. But this is a technology, and in the past we always had technologies that did that created jobs. These are going to be job decimators, and not on a little scale, on a huge scale, and that every major company and shop in this country and around the world will have a 3D printer to take care of parts or machinery or anything they need, and that so you don't have to send to China for it, or you don't have to wait 2 weeks for it, or wherever. It's going to be great, but it's not a job creator. It's a job decimator, and the same thing with robotics. That the better and better robotics, the more and more of them are going to be used, and the fewer and fewer people are going to be needed to uh, to do the job that these robots will do. But another disturbing thing is that sometime this year, it's been estimated by the Economist, the magazine, that 1% of the people will control as much wealth as the other 99%. And perhaps in 10 years, it'll be one half of 1%. People, the rich, are getting richer. Now, the poor some of the poor are being lifted up off the bottom, but not many. But when you have inequity on that scale, that causes a lot of friction, and that's going to cause a lot of problems in the world. And right now, there is no way around it because, especially in this country, because big business owns big government. And you take the pharmaceuticals. Now, I've been warned by AARP and by other sources that I have a supplement for my pharmaceuticals for the drugs that I take. That some generic drugs are going to increase sevenfold, 700% they're going up. Why? Because our government allows them to do it. Because Congress has been bought and paid for by the pharmaceutical and the healthcare industry. Now this is incredible. It's something that cost me $7 now it's going to cost me $49. Not because it costs any more to make. As a matter of fact, it costs less to make. These are generic drugs, but they're allowing these companies to set any price they damn well please, and this is beyond gouging. You know, it's crazy when the highest paid executive 2 years ago was the CEO of a healthcare company was paid $113 million. That was his base pay. All right. Now, how many hospital beds had to be filled just to scoop that guy's pay off the top. It's ridiculous. And these are the inequalities that are going to cause a lot of problems. But another problem, and it's as intractable perhaps as the distribution of wealth, is the fact that there's a war on with radical Islam. And I don't care what the Muslims say, and I don't care what everybody else is trying to sugarcoat it, that we are in 100 years war, if we're lucky, with radical Islam. And we're better off than most countries. You take Europe, there's millions of new Muslim immigrants migrate into Europe every year. And what if only 1% of several million are radical? That's all it takes to disrupt the entire country. You start screwing around with trains or planes or whatever, and you're screwing with the economy of some major companies and some major countries. And I'll add to that the debt service in these countries. Look at our own. Now we're running 4%. I think Obama's prediction is for next year's 4% debt. 4% of our gross domestic product will be the debt the government assumes. But that doesn't sound bad, 4%. But yet we're servicing debt that we've accumulated. We've accumulated $17 trillion worth of debt. All that debt has to be serviced. And how do you service it? You make more debt. Okay. You take countries like Argentina and even Brazil now are in danger of failed economies because of their debt burden. Look at the Japanese. They're just going to try a QE1 with them, and their debt is about 218% of their gross domestic product. So if you took every nickel every person in Japan and every corporation made for the next two and a third years, you would, excuse me, 2 1/5 years, and no one got paid or anything, you would service, you'd pay off the debt. Well, ours is running around 110% of our gross domestic product. But these debts just grow, and and that leads to another major problem, and that is how you ever going to service the tens of trillions of dollars worth of promises that individual states, the country, and individual communities have made to their workers. We have got trillions and tens of trillions, and some say it's a way over 100 trillion of obligation to pay firemen, school teachers, etc., county workers, street people, street workers, and so forth. Where are those funds going to come to? We can't all just keep raising taxes, because then people will be forced out of their homes and won't be able to feed themselves, and yada yada yada. So this is where there's another source of tremendous unrest. So we're fighting over, like, let's take another picture here. We're fighting over this Keystone pipeline. All right. Now we still seem so dependent on fossil fuels that look now. New Delhi now is the worst polluted city in the world, even worse than some of the ones in China. Yet both China and India are building coal burning furnaces for generating electricity as fast as they can. Now this has to be resolved. India will surpass China in population by 2030. Now Indians multiply like crazy. The Chinese have put a cap on theirs, and they will start to have a reduction in their population. But all these things come with a tremendous cost, and one of the problems is, whether you believe in global warming or not, you certainly do know that smog exists, and pollution is caused by burning fossil fuels. But yet we rely more and more on these fossil fuels. Keystone Pipeline, it's a useless hunk of crap. I meant, first of all, it's the bituminous stuff that they, it's not real oil. It's almost like tar. And the U.S. government, we've been over this, won't get any taxes from it because it'll be refined, sold overseas, and taxed on an overseas basis, not on American federal basis. But if they want to sell us something, and something they have a lot of, why don't they form a pipeline and bring us water? I mean, they could tap in to the Great Slave Lake and suck water out of there uh, for decades. And every western state, and particularly the Salinas Valley in California, they keep sucking water out of the Colorado. But by the time it gets to the Salinas Valley, so much of it is evaporated and been used that it's has a high salt content, and they're going to ruin the Salinas Valley on that alone. But they could certainly pipe water down from Canada, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, Iowa, anybody feeding off the Ogallala Basin uh, would certainly be more than happy to pay for water, fresh water, non containing no salts coming down from Canada. So if you want to build a pipeline, build us a huge pipeline and start sending us some water. That'll be the next big fight in the world, not oil, be water. Then we got a population problem. It's been estimated that by the year 2200, that half the people in the world will live in Africa. That Nigeria alone will have 1 billion people in it, and these countries that are still very tribal. When they left, when the Europeans left, they never educated anybody, so it was just a strong man took over, and they'll be fighting for 100 years. So I don't see anything bright, particularly on the horizon. Between the immigration, between the unemployment of the youth, um, education, the cost of education has gone through the roof, and what are we going to teach these people to do? Because well, look at farming. At one time, it took 70-80% of the population to feed 100%. Now we have 2% of the population in the United States feeds not only us, but we export food, grains, and things like crazy. So uh, because of the technology. But all those people rushed off to places like Detroit and New York and yada 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 to get jobs in the industry. Well, these industries, look at the car industry, how much robotics is there, and how much more robotics is going to come. That these people, what do you educate them for? I mean, most of the mathematicians that normally would go into discovering something now write algorithms for banking firms, for you know for Chase and Morgan Stanley, you name it. Why Citigroup and all? Why? Because that's where the money's at, and the government in cahoots with the banks allows them to sell naked shorts. They allow them to sell commodities where for every ounce of something you hold, they're allowed to sell 100 ounces. There are more ounces of paper silver traded in a day than there are mined in a year, much more, exceeding it by a couple hundred million ounces every day. Um, the market is crooked because the government is part of the market. So where the little guy doesn't stand much of a chance. If I asked to look for some bright spot, I guess I'd say uh, I'll be dead before for the masses uprise with the pitchforks and take over. But it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be happy days for a lot of people that are just being born, and for people that are in their teens, and a lot of people in their early 20s know it's not a great job market today. So if anybody has a solution to any one of these problems, I'd be more than happy to see a comment with you, and I'd be more than happy to discuss it on Skype or in a chat or any place else. Ray, want to thank you very much for your time. This is a 15-minute job, and I'm sorry it took me so long.